grade was barely competent and therefore neither mythologized nor tormented. Like other teachers who made little difference in our lives, he was simply tolerated. He taught us English, which he spoke passably, and French, which was as foreign to him as it was to us, though like us, he had grown up in a predominantly French-speaking province. We suffered his bonhomie laughter, looked forward to his absence, and were likely amused by the erection in his trousers as he explained points of grammar, lingering on subordinate clauses and compound complex sentences. And at those moments when we laughed with him rather than at him, we felt a residual sense of self-betrayal, as though we had given of ourselves too lightly. To snicker was easier. We never snickered at Miss Zucker. Scarcely 5 feet tall, she filled the classroom as she addressed the struggles between Parliament and the Stuart monarchs. Though James and Charles were no closer to us than a blue-footed booby, they became progressively real and important as we listened to Miss Zucker's indictment of whimsical and capricious monarchy. It was as though John Locke or Thomas Jefferson were standing by the blackboard, piecing together the foundations of human rights. No eyes drifted towards the window or consulted the hands of the clock. Miss Zucker had given history an identity other than lists of dates, battles, and explorations. We were hers to shape. She may have been unaware of other elements cooperating with her to focus our wondering and wandering eyes on her 17th century events, and by extension on our own century. Radical newspapers had begun to appear on the counter at Nathan's. In their pages, a barrage of arguments for the underdog, blacks in the United States, asbestos workers in Quebec. We transferred their grievances to those victimized by the blundering Stuarts. The inept analogy did not trouble us. We're not aiming at logical precision. Conscripted by the rebelliousness in the air, we absorbed the passion of our Russophilic neighbors, read the petitions circulated by those working for our communist MP Fred Rose, scorned Adrien Arcand's fascist thugs, and allowed Ms. Zucker's words to raise our political eyebrows. At least that, and often more than that. She drew a world in which events were not merely accidents, but the result of identifiable forces and individuals struggling, like us, for power. I've never read anything of the past, from Thucydides' Peloponnesian Wars to McCullough's biography of John Adams, without the perspectives that came from her stirring voice. Not one of my other classes, helpful in their own way, had the high seriousness of Ms. Zucker's class. And yet, in retrospect, there was one light moment, disregarded at the time, that stands for me as a counterpoint. The only non-Jew in our class was Harry Pinder, slender and shy. How he came to our class was a mystery because, let me interrupt myself for a moment. The high school that I went to had 1,100 students, and I would say there were no more than half a dozen that weren't Jewish. The street that I grew up on had one non-Jewish family. So for me, when I finally left Barabing High at age 15, 16, and went to McGill University, it was like going to, and that was only half a mile away, it was like going to a foreign country without a passport. It was a totally different experience. The only non-Jew in our class was Harry Pinder, slender and shy. How he came to our class was a mystery, because I had never seen a black family in our neighborhood. Everyone liked Pinder. We had not been taught to exclude those who intruded into our ghetto classrooms. And Harry, though shy, was always friendly. In the entire year that I knew him, he disappeared after my first year, I'd never seen him without a smile. One day, when Ms. Zucker was defending Parliament's opposition to Charles, she scanned the classroom to see what effects her arguments were producing. Her eye fell on Pinder's broad smile. Impulsively, She trumpeted his name, which resounded off the walls and ceiling as though there were no other sound in the universe but a swelling Pinder. Pinder maintained his smile. We waited to hear the rest of the argument. Looking back now, I see Pinder, that mysterious presence with the background as shaded as an epic hero's, raising by his silence another viewpoint. His response to all of her earnestness, to her passion for connecting the dots of history so that we could prepare ourselves to make a better world, was an eloquent smile of futility. It clearly was absurd to him, all of it. The debacle of the Stuarts was too immured in the past to be taken seriously. As for the contemporaneous events taking place in a Europe that was unraveling, they were too massive, too incomprehensible to meddle with. He had come to his own understanding, which permitted him to smile at whatever was looming overhead. Ms. Zucker disappeared after that year. Rumors circulated that she had been either a member of the Communist Party or at least a sympathizer. Although our district had been represented by a communist, the hiring of communist history teachers was another matter. And so Ms. Zucker's voice no longer boomed through our classroom, but her habit of poking at the homilies of Montreal's Anglo newspapers, the Herald, Star, and Gazette, stayed with us. The overt mission of Barrenting High was to prepare its students to excel in their final examinations in order for them to migrate in droves to McGill University. The unstated mission was to bring these immigrant children to an admiration of British imperial culture, which in our teachers' eyes was humanity's greatest achievement. We didn't quite see it that way. With the exception of Miss Zucker's class, the glories of the empire and the virtues of capitalism were the ideological bunting in the history that we studied. "I'll tell you what capitalism's giving you," raged Mr. McPherson to a class of skeptical students. "It's giving you your radios and your television sets," which struck me as an odd thing to say since no one I knew owned a TV. When radical petitions were circulated among the students, the principal, Mr. Patterson, a kindly man, urged in soft but decisive tones that we ignore them. Instead, we ignored him. Our reaction must have been puzzling to teachers who expected us to become loyal sons of the empire and to embrace the culture that had given us a globe largely painted in British pink from Piccadilly Circus to Bombay. Their agenda was unambiguous. We were budding citizens waiting for the next set of shaping hands. Our report cards periodically informed our parents that we were assimilating enough to move forward towards the professions, and that in addition to arithmetic functions and polysyllabic words, we understood the exalted station of the British Empire in the world. For all our flirtation with radicalism, however, we were smitten, cowed by much of what we saw in British culture. The very language of As You Like It, read in the 9th grade, with its power and grace, its distance and proximity. Or teachers like Mr. Dunn, Shakespeare's emissary in our last 2 grades. Plucking a handkerchief from his jacket sleeve with thumb and index finger, he could, with a word, lower an obstreperous student to the obsequious level of a dachshund. His manner, which smacked of Oscar Wilde, was something we had not yet experienced. And while making us aware of the power of language, made us also see ourselves as coarse, unlettered, and subcolonial, party crashers at a dance whose steps we had not begun to master. A showing of David Lean's production of Great Expectations had the same effect of placing us outside a world where high drama took place. Magwitch, emerging from the moors, the forbidding room in which Miss Havisham holds court, Pip's passage into snobbery. fictions witnessed in the darkness of the Kent Theatre reminded us that we were not to experience such drama in our houses, suffused with the odors of chicken soup and chopped liver. Plum pudding and the pomposity of Pumblechook, all part of a foreign world, a foreign grace, a form of grace fully available to our Christian brethren in Westmont, was rationed out to us in dollops through films or the offerings of our teachers. Nevertheless, the door was open. The world had issued an invitation. If we worked hard, played hard, we too could shed the last of our immigrant traces and take our place with other colonials in the expansiveness of the empire.